ये दवाई से हमारे को कोई असर नहीं होगा, हमारे को पैक से असर होएगा.
Delhi votes on February 5th. It's polling day for the assembly election here. No booze allowed. Dry day. Fast forward to February 8th, the votes get counted. Guess what? Another dry day. And it's not just Delhi, of course. India has a long list of days when liquor sales are banned. Polling days, major national holidays, Gandhi Jayanti, religious festivals. Some states even have their own additional dry days. But here's the question. What is a dry day really? Like really, is there any other country in the world that follows such a practice? Does this concept make sense in a modern democracy like ours at all? I'm Manish Adhikari and you're watching The Culture Project and more. And before we begin, if you're watching us on Instagram, can you please follow us? We'll truly appreciate it. Cheers. Pun intended. Okay, let's get on with it, shall we?
मेरे को 35 साल हो गया पीते हुए, मैंने आज तक कोई डोज नहीं ली दूसरी.
On a brisk November morning in 1948, as the Constituent Assembly met to shape the foundations of a new India, a fierce debate erupted over a contentious issue: prohibition. Among the voices in the hall, one stood out with unwavering conviction: Qazi Syed Karimuddin, a member from Central Provinces and Berar and a criminal lawyer par excellence apparently. He rose to his feet and passionately moved an amendment. The manufacture, sale and consumption of liquor should be absolutely prohibited. His words echoed through the chamber as he reminded the assembly of Mahatma Gandhi's lifelong fight against alcohol. Karimuddin argued that without a constitutional mandate, future governments might fail to curb the vice. Where there is liquor, Gandhiji cannot be, and where Gandhiji is, liquor cannot be, he declared, urging the assembly to honor the father of the nation's ideals. Okay, before we head further, a small detour. While this debate was going on in November 1948, Mahatma Gandhi had passed away in January of that year, assassinated by Nathuram Godse in January 1948. So Gandhi's ideals, not surprisingly, and his personal beliefs about alcohol and alcoholism had left a lasting impression on the gathering. But why was the Mahatma so anti-alcohol in the first place? Gandhi saw alcohol as a British imported vice, arguing that prohibition was a patriotic cause. He wrote in the Young India 1926 that alcohol led to sexual crimes and that the drunkard forgets the distinction between wife, mother and sister. He also believed that every religion had condemned drinking, that the drinking intoxicants was contrary to Islam and Hinduism, and to trade in them was sinful. Okay, back now to the Constituent Assembly debate. After Qazi Syed Karimuddin's resounding proclamation, Sri Biswanath Das from Orissa responded, "If we are speaking of prohibition, should we not also include opium?" He questioned why the ban was selectively focused on liquor while other intoxicants were left out of the discussion. Now, beyond the moral debate, there was also a pressing economic concern. Several members pointed out that excise duties on liquor formed a significant source of revenue for the states. A complete ban, they argued, would lead to financial instability at a time when the newly independent nation was struggling to build its economy. But Karimuddin was undeterred. "We do not wish to live by the excise revenue, which is in fact the revenue got by the ruin of so many labor class families," he said, condemning the argument that India should fund its development through the suffering of the poor. Now, as the discussion continued, the Constituent Assembly found itself at an impasse. While many agreed with the spirit of prohibition, they also recognized the practical challenges of enforcing such a law. The compromise that emerged was to include prohibition as a directive principle of state policy. Now, for many, this was a bitter compromise. One frustrated member made the scathing remark. He said, "But if we cannot have even the small reform in our constitution, the book will not be even worth touching with a pair of tongs." Thus, Article 47 of the Constitution was born, urging the state to work towards prohibition of intoxicating drinks. While it did not impose an outright ban, it enshrined the idea that governments should strive for it. But here's the catch: directive principles are not enforceable. They're just guidelines, and most states, it turned out, did not impose prohibition. Instead, they decided to regulate and tax alcohol. Today, liquor revenue sometimes makes up to 15% of state budgets. And as seen during COVID-19 lockdowns, state governments were desperate to open liquor stores. The reason? They needed the money. Do other countries have dry days? Yes, but not quite like India. Thailand bans alcohol sales on Buddhist holidays. Sri Lanka has a dry day on Poya, which is the full moon days. The US once had full-blown prohibition, 1920 to 1933. It failed spectacularly. Now, the mafia thrived, illegal speakeasies flourished, and the government lost tax revenue. But dry days for elections? India is almost alone in enforcing it so strictly. Now, does it make sense today? Critics argue that dry days are pointless. People stock up in advance. In fact, many governments issue press releases announcing dry days, which to me is as close as you can come to urging someone to tank up before the dry day hits. On such days, liquor flows through black markets also. If anything, prohibition fuels illegal sales and corruption. Supporters say that dry days uphold public order on sensitive occasions. No one wants drunken brawls at polling booths. But in a democracy, should the state be telling people what they can or cannot drink? Or is this just another relic of an era when the government thought it could morally police its citizens? Thanks for tuning into the Culture Project and more. Till next time, stay curious and keep exploring the powerful stories that shape our world.